You almost got my last name right, but yeah. Christopher Kainz. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to talk about three things today. First of all, Aurora a little company introduction. And then secondly, regulation across European markets. And then thirdly, the French pilot program. I think that's particularly interesting because France is the country that has recently launched a medical cannabis pilot program with a really formal education program for prescribers. So I think it's relevant. Quick introduction to me, Chris. I work at Aurora for 3 years now. I look after the French market. That's why I'm talking about it today. I also do strategy and product development. And before joining Aurora, I was working in a very different field. I was doing financial services in London. And the stigma of cannabis also became very apparent to me when I was leaving my old job. When I said that I'm going to work for a medical cannabis company, people were saying, "What?" And they were thinking that I was ending my career or something like that. So the stigma really persists, but I think that we're all working towards reducing and ending that stigma. So let's start. Is that the thing? All right. So we are present in 3 different segments. So our mother company is Canadian, but our European business is quite autonomous. So our headquarters are in Berlin. And while we're present in 3 different segments, in Canada, in medical cannabis, adult use cannabis, and CBD, in Europe we only do medical cannabis for the moment. Is it working? Yes. Our mission in Europe is to help patients get access to high quality and safe medical cannabis products for their treatments. And to explain Europe a little bit, I mean, I don't have to talk about the company so much. I think we've had enough company introductions today. But you can see that medical cannabis access is not given yet in Europe, also given by our company footprint. So our products are available in around 10 countries, but legal and regulatory access is still limited today a lot. One topic that was also mentioned a little bit was adult use. And while I appreciate the American optimism that Andrew brings to the table, I think I have to disappoint you that in 5 years we're not going to have medical and recreational cannabis legalized across all of Europe, unfortunately. I think the markets where we have an indication that this might be possible are Luxembourg and Germany, maybe Malta, Italy, and maybe Switzerland, where some recreational pilot programs are happening. But with other markets, it's very unlikely and very uncertain. I can tell you for sure that France and the UK are not going to have any recreational cannabis available in the next 5 years. But we're seeing one trend, and it's a clear trend towards legalization in all markets. You know, we've had different pilot programs, like the Danish pilot program or the French pilot program, and we have had a lot of European countries legalizing medical cannabis and no country backtracking. So it's been only positive development so far. And even though the regulators let us wait a long time, we're seeing a clear trend towards legalization for medical cannabis. Just before I go into the regulation of the different markets, about the adult use market, I want to make a key differentiation between the two, because as you might be aware, Germany has announced that they're going to legalize recreational cannabis. This was a huge announcement because so far only Luxembourg was the only country that made a clear statement towards legalizing recreational cannabis. And I think it poses some dangers also for the medical cannabis system because, as was mentioned before, there are 2 very different systems. When the recreational market is going to be legalized, we need to make sure that patients still have access to their medical cannabis products. We need to make sure that the application for doctors is easy, that bureaucracy is reduced, and that reimbursement is given to patients who need medical cannabis products. The recreational market is going to be very different. The quality, I mean, we talked about it, I think someone teasered it. It's not likely that it's going to be at the same level at EU GMP because it's just not possible to do it at such a scale. To give you an indication of the scale of the recreational market, currently in Germany we have around 7 tons of distribution of medical cannabis today, of flowers, 7 tons, and the recreational market is going to be at 400 tons. So it's a completely different scale where it's very unlikely to be able to impose EU GMP rules. There's going to be something in between, also trying to balance quality and also competition with the black market. All right, let's go back to the medical cannabis market and let's look at the differences. We also talked about, somebody mentioned, I think my colleague Robert from Bedrocan, he mentioned one of the key challenges is EU harmonization. And that becomes very evident when you actually compare different markets and the regulation in these different markets. So you can see that flowers are available in all of the markets indicated on the slide, but other products are sometimes not. And we know that flowers are typically used for different indications than extracts. Flowers are more for acute and imminent pain, while extracts are used for ongoing pain. So this challenge becomes evident when you look at access for these products in different markets. 2 markets that are actually not listed here are Austria and Switzerland, where you only have isolates available, so patients in these markets don't have access to flowers or extracts. Also, regulation. I mean, this is a completely different topic. It's also relevant to doctors and patients because when you have very formal, very stringent procedures to enter a market, so this is kind of the second segment here, market authorization, formal approval, etc. When we look at markets like Poland, where a product application takes 1 or 2 years, this can be a really big issue because right now, for example, in Poland, we're the only company present together with Canopy. And if both of these companies have bad harvest, it's a plant, we can't 100% control it, then there's no availability for patients. So this regulation is also very dangerous for the supply of medical cannabis. Another challenge is kind of this last box in the second segment here, prescription limited to certain indications. So we also have some markets where medical cannabis is really strictly limited to certain indications. And obviously reimbursement, we talked about this already today. There isn't really a market where this is ideal today in Europe. We have Luxembourg where it's 100% reimbursed, but they limit the number of patients that can go into the pilot program that they're currently running. And then we also have the Czech Republic where they reimburse 90% of the costs. But otherwise, it is a challenging procedure. One example that I can also give you about the kind of the hurdles for doctors and patients is that I had a surgery like 1 month ago for a hernia. And then I asked the GP and my surgeon if they would be able to prescribe me medical cannabis. The GP's response was like, I looked into it a few years ago, but it would take me too many hours. I have too many patients. I cannot look into it. My surgeon said he's 61. He's not going to spend time to learn something completely new, to prescribe something. So, this was just something for me after surgery. But if you have a serious indication and you're a patient, imagine that you have to try to go to so many different doctors and find someone who will finally make the time to go through all of the bureaucracy in Germany, which is the country with the highest number of patients in Europe. You would think it's easier. So there are some serious regulatory challenges. These regulatory challenges become evident also in the product mix. When you're thinking about patients in Europe, you would think, we're all next to each other, we have similar lifestyles, we would have a similar number of patients with the same indication, so they would need similar types of products, right? Like flowers, extracts, isolates, etc. you can see that this differs significantly across countries. So in some countries where only flowers are legal, you will only have that, etc. So back to the company, back to us. What products do we have available? Flowers that we already talked a lot. So they're administered through vaporization, used for acute pain. We have extracts available, also in different dosages. And we have also other products, such as isolates and capsules. We're also investing significantly into the production of new products because we're working with patients, with doctors to try to understand what are the indications that we're treating and what are some of the indications that we're treating not so well at the moment. One example is, for instance, a lot of patients that we're working with have issues swallowing, and the extracts or capsules are not ideal formats for that. So we're also trying to understand what product format can we develop for patients that have issues swallowing. Two quick slides that I put in here in the middle of the conference because we're talking about flowers versus extracts and the difference between them. I think it's quite challenging to sometimes understand the difference, so I just put here a simple table for people to understand. Flowers are administered through vaporization, have a very fast onset, but also don't have a very long duration of the effect. So they are typically used for acute pain, while extracts or capsules, they're used through oral ingestion, and then they're used for ongoing pain. A lot of patients also use a combination of both. So they have some extracts or some capsules for ongoing pain, and when they have some additional pain attacks, they will also use flowers as a complementary therapy. There were also some questions about extracts and isolates. So isolates are here indicated as single agents, and you can see some of the differences. So it was mentioned already, you know, in the full spectrum oils, you have the complete cannabinoid profile, you have terpenes, you can have the entourage effect, and so on and so on. Just put this in here in case somebody wants a visual overview and the difference between it. Where does our product come from that we sell, our flowers, our extracts, etc.? It comes mostly from our Danish facility in Odense, so that's Aurora Nordic. We also have some facilities in Canada, and we just launched our new facility in Germany, which is supplying the German authorities BfArM. So there was a tender process, and we were one of the 3 companies that won that process, and now we're supplying German patients with German domestic cultivation. About our facility in Denmark, we can produce around 10 tons with it. It used to be a tomato facility, and it was repurposed for medical cannabis. We've been certified since 2020 with the EU GMP certification. Currently, we're covering around 90% of our demand from this facility. I've already talked about the differences in the legal statuses across Europe. I don't think we need to go into that. I think the key point here again is to mention that we're going into a positive direction, even though we're seeing very slow progress when it comes to everything from actual medical cannabis legalization, product availability, reimbursement. We can see a positive trend overall. So let's talk about the French pilot program a little bit. In 2019, the French government announced that they want to start running a pilot program. And in 2020, it was published. There was a call for submission of dossiers, and the French authorities were asking companies to submit dossiers for 3 different product types: flowers, extracts, and capsules. And we did that. They also requested every participant to partner with a local French pharma company. So we found Etipharm as a partner, and we submitted together a dossier. We were able to win all of the medical cannabis flower lots together with them, and 3 other companies won the other lots for extracts and capsules. The first import happened in April, and right now there are strong indications that the market is going to be generalized. So what that means is that the market is going to be legalized after the pilot program in March next year. This whole pilot program, like what does it mean? I think some people already mentioned the pilot program in Denmark. It's a little bit more formal than in Denmark. So the number of patients is limited to 3,000, for example. We have 5 indications, which are similar to the ones in Denmark. So we have neuropathic pain, we have epilepsy, we have oncology, we have palliative care, and we have oncology as indications that can be prescribed for. We have the 3 different product types that I've mentioned before, and we have a duration of 2 years. What's interesting is that the pilot program is not actually used to look at the effects and the treatment of patients with medical cannabis, but it's actually the formal objective and the official objective is to test the supply chain and the distribution of medical cannabis in France. So what's special about this program and why am I presenting it here today? It's quite unique because it's the first pilot program in this form that is so stringent and so formal. One of the key differences to other programs or other legalizations is that you have a mandatory education program for prescribers and dispensers. So all doctors who want to prescribe medical cannabis and all pharmacists who want to dispense medical cannabis have to do an online training course, which I'm going to talk about a little bit afterwards. The ANSM, the regulator responsible for the whole pilot program, has developed this training and are running it. The second really interesting point about this pilot program is that all products are provided for free by the suppliers. They're not just provided for free, they're also distributed for free, and all of the suppliers have to handle the pharmacovigilance, so any complaints by patients or doctors. The overall costs for the pilot program are estimated to be 20 million euros for the 4 suppliers and the partners, their local pharma partners. That's the third point that I already mentioned before. So we partnered up with a French pharma company. The reason for that being that was actually a mandate. And we've partnered up with Etipharm, a local French company that is specialized in central nervous system diseases, so have very similar targets to us. Where are we now? So as I mentioned before, Aurora, we won all of the 3 flower lots. So we're providing THC, balanced, and CBD dominant flowers. We have by now completed our 3rd shipment. Hundreds of doctors have been trained overall, and we have approximately 1,600 or 1,700 patients that have been recruited into the program until today. There are several opportunities and challenges posed by this program. So first of all, obviously the pilot program finally allowed patients in France to get legal access to medical cannabis, but unfortunately only for those 5 indications. We have a weekly exchange with the regulators, so we know that they want to legalize medical cannabis after the pilot program, and they also want to extend the number of indications, but it doesn't seem likely that they're going to make it available for all indications. The second opportunity here listed is this education program that I've already mentioned. I think that we've heard from a lot of prescribers today that the education is really lacking, and that it's difficult to get information. It's difficult to get information on product availability, how to prescribe products. So for example, for instance, flowers are administered with vaporizers. How are prescribers supposed to know how to prescribe flowers with vaporizers and the dosing, etc., etc.? So it is quite challenging, and this training program that the ANSM has developed can be a blueprint for further training programs across Europe. Some of the challenges are that the ANSM has, for example, pushed prescribers also in the training to go towards CBD dominant and extract dominant forms. So they've really been hesitant with letting doctors prescribe flowers and also THC dominant products, which is in stark contrast to other markets such as Germany, where we see that approximately 80% of flowers are THC dominant. They have meanwhile shifted their approach a little bit, so they're also very receptive to feedback from doctors, patients, and from the participants. So they have removed this wording around pushing CBD so much and have been more open to THC. What's a really big question mark is now what's going to happen after the pilot program. Yeah, and we will see. The last thing that I want to discuss is this education program mentioned. So what's really special about it is that it was created by the regulator, by the ANSM. It's harmonized across the entire country. So every doctor and every pharmacist who's participating in the program and who wants to participate and prescribe medical cannabis after the pilot program will have to go through the education will have to do the education program. It consists of 13 chapters, so it starts with an introduction to the pilot program and goes through the endocannabinoid system and also through the products that are available and how to prescribe them, how to prescribe flowers together with vaporizers, etc., etc. And it takes around 3 hours to complete. We have had some feedbacks from prescribers that the program content is sometimes a little bit lean in some areas, especially when it comes to endocannabinoid system. Doctors didn't really get a clear message about it and would prefer some other type of structuring of the program. Yeah, I think that was it from my side. I think here's my contact information. I think what the really big question is now is what's going to happen after the pilot program. So we've had some strong indications from the ANSM and from the authorities that they are going to legalize medical cannabis. I mean, also, what is their option? You know, they have so many patients now already on medical cannabis, they cannot take away their medicine. But we've had some positive news that they want to expand the number of indications. And there are some big questions now, right? So what are the indications that they're going to expand it to? We've heard that they are also considering to expand it to psychological indications, to additional neurological indications, potentially dermatology, etc. Big question is around product status. So right now it has a special status as part of the pilot program, but afterwards, what is it going to be classified as? So in Germany, you have a classification as a API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, which brings a lot of challenges with it. And in France, it seems like they're going towards a special product status, which will classify medical cannabis as a somewhat a pro forma finished product. So it will not require any further manipulation in pharmacies, which is a good sign. There is also obviously the question on reimbursement. And right now it seems like the ANSM is going to lobby for reimbursement for all of the patients that are on the pilot program and for any patients that are going to enter the program afterwards as part of those 5 admitted indications and any others. But overall, there are many question marks. We have 10 months to go until the end of the French pilot program, and many areas are still unclear, so we hope to get some information from the regulators soon, because we also need to prepare for the end of the pilot program. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I also brought some brochures for healthcare professionals that we have prepared in English for international markets, so please feel free to come and take a brochure about medical cannabis. But otherwise, I would say thank you at this point.
Anybody have questions?
The stock market.
About the stock market?
Finally turn after this project.
Okay, it's been going up. That's Are you asking me? Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to give you any investor advice. Yeah, that's illegal. But you know what my answer would be, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Buy low. I have a question.
Yeah.
So, being American, I'm used to things moving maybe a little bit faster. Is it possible that Europe, maybe in 5 years, will legalize more broadly medical and leave adult use to decriminalization instead of legalization? Do you think decrim will happen before adult use legalization? Or do you think it's all going to sort of happen differently in every country?
I think if we look at our experience so far and the data, every market that I'm aware of first legalized medical cannabis, and then after a few years, if it happened, then there would be adult use legalization. I think decriminalization is another topic. I think it depends very much on the political parties in power, because cannabis is such a polarized topic. And then, you will have some countries like Portugal who will decriminalize it at least. But I think that the first step towards any trend is always the legalization of medical cannabis in the country. And I think broadly we are going to see that. We have only seen it, like I mentioned, going in one direction. I think in Europe we're going to see more and more countries legalizing that. What's unfortunate is that this legalization doesn't actually come from governments and authorities reviewing the science and realizing this is a valid therapy. It typically comes from patients suing the government, and then the Supreme Court deciding medical cannabis should be given as a medicine to patients. So I think that we will be seeing some additional maybe court cases in some countries. Maybe we'll be seeing some other countries opening up by themselves, like France did, out of commercial reasons. Macron, he's a very business-driven commercial guy, so he saw a big opportunity in it, which was one of the main drivers as well. So yeah. Any other questions?
Do you think you'll be developing any non-prescription drugs that you can buy over the counter instead of for example, a headache pill in the future that's sort of accessible to anyone to go and buy?
You mean CBD
pharmacy
products, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have some CBD products available in Canada and in the US under our brand Reliever. In Europe, it's such a competitive field and also a very unregulated field. So we want to wait for the authorities to decide. We've seen some movement, some trends from the Commission, from the EU Commission. They've recently said that CBD is not a narcotic. And we're waiting for some clear regulation. So we're also listed on the stock exchange, and because we're listed, it requires us to really play in markets where it's black and white and we cannot enter any gray areas. So until the Commission or individual countries say CBD falls under the novel food license or has a different status, until then we cannot sell those products, unfortunately.
Yes, one more question over here.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. I'm Swedish journalist, and I've been writing about these things in 6 years, cannabis, hemp, in the Alma Nova magazine. And so I think I just wanted to add something to your last question before that, which was, I think also what can push the development further to legalize it here in Sweden would be that people like Andreas Törn, which you might not know of, but many people here in Sweden know of him. He grew his own medicine. He grew his own cannabis, and then he was arrested. It was a trial here, but he got a very light sentence for that, just a few thousand crowns sentence for having his own cannabis. But he has brought Sweden for European Union trial in the European Court. And I really think that is gonna make a big difference here. If he wins, it's gonna be a big thing for Sweden. I think he's the one who's gonna change the history in Sweden.
That would be fantastic, and I think it also ties in nicely with the topic of EU harmonization that we talked about. It doesn't make sense that all of us have these different regulations and that we have to wait for each individual country to come up with their own legal and regulatory framework to make it complex, to have reimbursement in this country and not in this country, that you have to organize a transport of 17 people that you mentioned to go from Sweden to Denmark with patients who have really big issues and who shouldn't be faced with these barriers, you know, to get their medicine. So I hope that the EU is able to take it on as one of their competences. Let's see if it happens. Yeah, but these court cases often change something, because in the end, when it comes to the court, when it comes to the Supreme Court, it's a basic human right to have access to your medicine if that's the only thing that works, right? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
All right.